Geoverse Part 3 To Live is Human by GeodesicDragon Chapter 9 Est Ultio Humanum.
"Wait a minute," John said. "This is Derek?"
I nodded.
"The guy who shot you and left you to die?"
"Yep," I replied. "That's him."
"Oh shit."
He walked over to Derek, who seemed unfazed by his presence.
"Holy shit," he said. "You've really let yourself go, haven't you?"
A pause.
"Brother."
Derek snarled.
"What?"
I yelled.
"You're related?"
John nodded.
"Unfortunately, yes,"
he replied.
Derek didn't approve when I told our parents that I was joining MI6.
But of course they didn't care. Derek spat. Their darling little boy had done them proud once more.
"Whereas you,"
John retorted,
"had just let them down for the millionth time after being caught shoplifting again.
The only time they cared was when I did something wrong."
"Then maybe," John snarled, "you should have done something good in your miserable life instead of settling on petty crime."
"Fuck you!" Derek snapped. "Fucking goody two-shoes!"
"Enough!"
I shouted. Both siblings looked at me.
"I suppose you're wondering how and why I'm here,"
Derek said. "Yes," I replied, "because the last time I saw you, you were being hauled off to jail." Derek laughed.
"Ah, yes, jail,"
he said. "Trust the British judicial system to put a maniac like me into an open prison. I simply walked out the front gate and never went back."
"That seems highly cliched," I said.
"But whatever. Now how did you get back here?"
"I was on an industrial estate when I came across a warehouse," Derek explained. "It looked to be a good place to crash for the night, so I went inside. Imagine my surprise when I find a fucking portal in the downstairs room."
John and I looked at each other. "Sorrow," we muttered in unison.
"Is that who built it?"
Derek said, the faint trace of a smile on his face.
"Whatever. I relished the thought of hiding in a whole new universe. But when I realized it was this shithole again, I decided that I'd go back."
"But then the army turned up," I proffered.
Derek nodded. "I honestly thought they were looking for me, so I hid," he said. "So I hid and waited until they were gone. But then I saw them dragging your worthless carcass in."
"I had a bag over my head," I said. "So how could you tell?"
"I recognized your clothes."
I paused for a moment. "Yeah, okay, whatever," I said. "What are you going to do then? Are you going to try and kill me again?"
Derek nodded.
I laughed. "Oh well, okay then," I said. "But at least now I know why you are so angry." Derek looked at me blankly. I took advantage of his confusion to speak again. "I can tell from the way you and John were speaking to each other earlier that you blame your parents for everything that's gone wrong in your life. But you simply can't accept the fact that they're not the ones at fault here." I pointed at him. "It's all your fault." As the last word left my lips, Derek's face turned red and he screamed in fury.
"I told you already," he roared, "that you're not my fucking therapist."
"No, I'm not," I replied. "I'm simply a better person than you." Derek stomped over to a tree and snapped a branch off it. He scraped it against the trunk until it was left with a point.
"I'll kill you,"
he yelled as he held his makeshift spear.
"Derek, don't,"
John said.
"You are better than this. Gail's wrong. Our parents are at fault. You did everything you could to please them, and they threw it back at you, preferring to dote on me instead. I stood in the way of your progress."
Derek glared at his brother as John pointed at me.
"He's nothing," he said. "I took everything you could have had from you and rubbed it in your face. If anyone is more deserving of your anger, it's me."
Derek screamed and lunged at John with the spear. John dodged the blow, grabbing the weapon with both hands. He headbutted Derek and wrestled the spear from his hands, throwing it onto the ground. Derek flailed wildly, swinging his fists while roaring like a wounded animal. John dodged or blocked most of his blows, his MI6 training clearly giving him the advantage. He retaliated, launching a fury of blows into Derek's chest, pummeling him repeatedly. The wind escaped from Derek's lips as he groaned and snarled alternatively. John hesitated for a moment, and Derek seized his moment. Wrapping his arms around John's waist, he brought him to the ground with a dull thud. John put up his arms to protect his face, allowing Derek to begin pummeling at his chest. When John put his arms over his chest, Derek punched him repeatedly in the face. I stood motionless, paralyzed with fear over what might happen. I saw the spear lying in the grass and picked it up. I swung it over my shoulder and brought it down with all my might. The weapon connected with the top of Derek's head with a sickening crack. He stopped hitting John and leapt to his feet. Instinctively, I swung the spear around again, hitting Derek in the side of the head. Another crack, and he dropped to his knees. He tried grabbing the weapon from me using both hands. My strength, while impressive due to my job at the club, was no match for Derek's unbridled fury, and he managed to take the spear from me. Immediately I kicked him in the face as hard as I could. Blood, spittle, and teeth flew from his jaw as he fell face first onto the ground, unmoving. Panting, I went over to John. "Are you okay, mate?" I asked. He coughed, a thin trail of blood escaping from his mouth. "I'm fine," he said, wiping the blood away. "But I think we should be more worried about Derek." "I'm sorry," I replied, "for hitting him like that." "He was trying to kill me," John replied. "You did what you had to do to save my ass." I helped him to his feet as Shining Armor entered the clearing with a squad of guards. "Fluttershy called us about a lot of screaming," he said, urgency in his voice. "What in Tartarus happened?" "Ask him," I said, pointing at Derek. "He tried to kill us." "I see," Shining replied. He motioned to his guards and they picked Derek up. "Come on," he said to John. "You need to get yourself to the hospital. Let's go." John nodded and prepared to follow Shining. Before he could go, I put a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you," I said, "for choosing me over your own brother." "You're my friend," he replied. "And Derek is no family of mine. Not now. I've got all the family I want right here." He took a step forward before stopping and turning to face me. "But at least this proves something," he said with a grin. "What?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "It proves that our friendship is real," he replied. "I wouldn't take a beating like that for anyone, you know." I nodded. "Our friendship was always real," I said. John smiled, and we set off after Shining Armor, with Derek still slumped over the backs of 2 guards. As I looked at John, I felt proud to call him my friend. Revenge is human, but friendship is eternal, and I wouldn't have it any other way.